Hi class, this is Bill with a continuing video on designing a database. In the first video we talked a little bit about the setup, what's the idea behind it, what are some general strategies. We also looked at normalization and defined the first three normalization forms. We also introduced the problem that we're going to use as a sample, talking about some of the issues that we spotted right away. So we're going to pick up with this video and start talking about how to solve some of those problems. So let's jump back to that and handle it. So here we are back at our problem, and let us take the first thing that's probably jumps to mind. Let's work on this table first, because we sort of have the idea that this is going to be the member table. So I'm going to apply a title style here so we know that is our member table, right? Now, eventually we're going to pull some of this stuff out, but that's a good start. And maybe the first thing we probably want to do is start talking about primary keys. So what are we going to use as a primary key for the member table? First thing we do is try to see if there's something that jumps out at us. There's the member name. Could we use that as a primary key? Well, probably not great. You could have two people with the same name. There's more than one John Smith in the world, so maybe that's not great. Plus, long text columns are not our favorite. They're not as efficient, so that probably doesn't work. How about phone? Well, we're almost at a day where phone number is pretty well tied, but people do change phones, change numbers sometimes. Some people still do share a phone, so that's not a great idea. We really don't have anything here that looks like the perfect primary key. And if you don't have that, then not a big deal, right? We can always come and we can insert a cell to the left here. Again, I'm not teaching you how to use Word. I'm just trying to make the problems, documentable here somewhere. So we can always generate an ID. They don't have to start with 1, right? We could start with 101 or whatever number we feel is good. But for the moment, let's just pretend that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is completely fine. And I'm going to just put an asterisk here, or we can actually mark it PK, but an asterisk is fine for the moment to denote that that's our primary key. So the member table now has a primary key. That's great. The next one, let's start tackling the easy problem first, and that is the office. So let me insert a table so that we can start working on that. Okay, here we have a little tiny table, and let's say for the moment that this is going to be where we deal with our offices. So I will apply once again a big nice border or big heading so we see that. Okay, so what are we going to do with these offices? Well, you notice so far we have this many offices listed, so probably that's going to be data. This is going to be the office name perhaps, right? And then let's just call it name for the moment, and that's going to be, let's just copy down that data, vice president, and that's going to be the secretary. More can come later, sure. So let's just pull out those offices here. And then the next thing that we have to start thinking about is there a natural primary key for that? And you might say, well, none of those words are that big, so we certainly could use that text as a primary key, so we could do that. Again, yeah, it might be on the line, but sure, we could also make an ID, right? We can always do that, and again, doesn't have to be 1, 2, 3, but that's probably just completely fine for now. So now we have a way to tag each person. Remember, this is a primary key here. Here's a foreign key here, perhaps, so we could certainly think about that. But before we get too far, we want to think about what the relationship is going to be between the member table and the office table. So let's think about it, and remember that one dimension that you might not think to include here is time. So let's go see this question. Can an office be held by more than one person over time? Well, sure. We see right here the presidency was held by 2 different people over time. Sure. Let's take the other side. Can one member hold multiple offices over time? Yeah, even though there's not an example here, if we ask, I bet that Pat Portillo was the president in this year, but before was probably in another role. We should probably see that here. So if we think about it, this is really going to be something different. This is going to be a many-to-many relationship, not a one-to-many. So one of the things that we have to think about is that we're going to need a second linking table for this, right? So I'm going to pull these out, and I'm going to copy them, and then I'm going to make a member office table, right? So that's going to help us link those two things. As with all linking tables, I'm just going to ignore this for now. As with all linking tables, what we're going to do is here have the member ID and here have the office ID. And again, we don't care about any of the spelling. We can just ignore those things for now. Not something that we need to care about. Ignore all. Okay, so now in member office, we're going to take out these words and we're going to find a way to record who held what office when. So let's see if we can figure that out. We're going to take out this data. So let's go see if we can put these people into their offices. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so let's see. Pat was president in 2016. So instead of showing president here, I'm going to put an entry that says member number 2 held office number 1. For this one, member number 3 held office number 1. For this row, I'm going to say member number 4 held office number 2. For this one, member number 5 held office number 3. Last, member number 6 held office number 2. So you see, all I'm doing here is I'm going through and marking who held what office and when. Since this is a linking table, we're probably going to actually have a composite primary key by default. So all of these both of these columns are going to be primary keys. And I've now transferred all of this data, this part of the data. So I can actually get rid of that because I've accomplished that task, right? The part that I haven't, though, figured out is what to do with this. So now we have to think about, where does that 2016 belong? Is that something that stays in the member table? Well, not really, because Pat maybe didn't hold just one office in 2016, so 2016 isn't really an attribute of Pat. Well, does it go in the office table? Do I put it here next to president? Well, no, the 2016 isn't an attribute of the office either. The 2016 is really an attribute of the marriage of the member and the office. It's an attribute of the combined record of what office that person held. So the only table that can go in is going to be this one. So I'm going to add a column, and now I have room for this because this is going to be the year. So member number 2 held office number 1 in 2016. That takes care of that. Member number 3 held office number 1, 2015. That takes care of that. And so forth down the line. 2016 goes there, 5, 2016, 6, 2015. So if you look at this, we have now taken everything out of this column because it was an entity that didn't belong in there, because there was repeated data in there, and because there were non-scalar values in a cell, there were multiple pieces of data. All of that is now gone, and we've moved it entirely to these other tables. That's great work, right? We've actually accomplished our first normalization task. By getting rid of repeated data, by getting rid of non-scalar data, by getting rid of entities that didn't belong, we've assigned primary keys. We're now doing pretty good, right? We're off to a darn good start. So that's how we handle our first problem, and that's going to be this offices and member office linking table. We're going to pick up in a minute with the committees problem, right? So let's pick up in the next video working on the committees, and I think we're going to see it's a pretty similar problem to what we have here. So let's pick up in the next video with that.